We're live. Yes. Well done. Well
Big
done,
red
me.
live. Well done, you. Pat on your back, Lee.
Phew. That's it. I can end it now. I've tested it. It works. It's all good. So, for people who are watching or listening or catching up or whatever, I'm Lee Griffith, and this is the Unlearning Conversation, where we're going to have honest chats about the stories, the expectations, and the basic bullshit that we've had to, I suppose, let go of in order to build life and work in a way that means something to us as individuals. And I've got a very special person as my first guest in these conversations. We met in a past life, and that's not in some like woo way.
Well, maybe we did.
Maybe we did. Maybe our stars were always aligned. I don't know. But for those of you who may have known us in our past lives, we used to do a podcast together. Well, we knew each other for a long, long time before that, but we also used to do a podcast together. And actually, this going live here was very reminiscent of the early days in COVID where we started to show up on Instagram and do Instagram lives. The only difference is we've got a cuppa today, whereas before we
used to be gin.
Used to be gin. I did contemplate, should I crack out a beer or something? But I thought 2 o'clock, maybe not for my first one. It's a different platform, different vibes, maybe. We will see. So I absolutely had to have Carrie-Ann. Actually, I haven't even said your name yet, have I? Carrie-Ann Wade. As my first guest on these Unlearning Conversations. Because I don't think she'd ever talk to me again if I had gone live with anybody else. So that's reason one why she's on here. Reason two, she's just fabulous. Reason three, we've kind of charted and gone through. I'm saying the word journey, and I instantly am cringing. I really must find a better word for that. But we've gone through some similar shit to each other recently and in the past as well, and we've had many of the conversations over a gin, over a cup of tea, over cake, and I wanted to invite you onto this first Unlearning Conversation to not lay out your soul, but like just to share.
Oh God, how long have we got? You said short and sharp.
Yeah, short and sharp. So that's why there's a lot of stuff that we've experienced with each other. No, we're have gone through, like we're work in progress. So neither of us are showing up, and these conversations aren't designed to be like finished. I've got my shit sorted because
you. Although I have to say I'm going to say you're one of my trailblazers with this whole unlearning, really going for what you want in life, even if you're not quite sure what you want. And so I say trailblazer. I know I've mentioned this to you before. I say Lee's my trailblazer, and my husband says, "Oh bloody hell, not Lee again." What she encouraged you and influenced you to do this time. So you are definitely in that influencing space for me, Lee, but also trusted person.
Hashtag influencer.
Yeah, you are.
So for those who might not have met you before, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I, like you, I'm a recovering corporate comms director. I had a slightly over 20-year comms career, and that career ended in a director role. I left that role, it'll be 2 years ago this year, I think June time.
Wow, really?
I know, it's gone really quick. Without a real plan of what I was going to do. I was going to have a big break, loads of time off, and then the thing I love doing is mentoring comms professionals and others, and lots of stuff around kind of team development and culture. So definitely doing that with my own business, plug my own business called Cat Pajamas. You can look me up, Cat Pajamas Communications. And yeah, I just had enough, really. I was teetering on, I didn't know it at the time, but teetering on being burnt out completely, had sort of lost my way in terms of who I was professionally, what I stood for, worked in an environment where I felt my professional integrity and my values were being constantly challenged, and I didn't have the energy, the space, the team around me to positively influence, even though I was in a really senior role. So it all sort of came to a head, and I left, and I'm now doing my own thing. So I do a bit of consultancy. I'm doing some fun stuff that is non-work related for a change, which is really nice. And working with lots of brilliant people who I get to choose. So it's lovely.
Yeah. And who were you before the job titles? Before the Cat's PJs, before the comms director, who were you?
Who was I? Well, I was and still am a massive extrovert, so I just love being around people. Although I have noticed with age that the amount of time I can spend with people does seem to be slightly shortening before I feel a bit like, oh, I just need a little bit of a bit of me time.
Is it age or the people?
Now, let's say age. I'm trying really hard to be surrounded by only the people that light me up, to be honest with you, which is also another nice thing that you hopefully get to choose as you start to work your way through things in life. But I have always loved writing. I've always loved reading. Used to be obsessed with reading books. Sort of 90s kind of vibes in terms of like music. I think I went through everything from I'm going to be a writer and a journalist to a travel photographer to a fashion designer to a teacher. So I never really had my own shit together, if I'm honest with you. I've always just sort of been a bit of an opportunist. And yeah, that's kind of me, really. So yeah, I feel like I wasn't prepared for that question.
Well, that's part of our conditioning, isn't it? Like we are always prepared for certain things, and then we flounder when it doesn't follow the script. So like, let's rewrite our own script, and then we're less surprised when things go differently. So anyway, moving on to, I suppose I want to tap into what's a belief or a rule that you have always followed but have started to question, or you've realised actually, is this bullshit that's going on here? And yeah, something that you've perhaps lived by for a long time.
Do there only have to be one? Will I get the chance to say some others?
I'm sure in this conversation you will, but let's just go for one.
So something that has always sort of been drilled into me, but also through some of my own experience and circumstance throughout life, has definitely been around sort of finances, being sensible with money, making decisions based on sort of maximum sort of profitability, let's say. So have I got, are you going for the jobs that are always going to pay you more? Like you must be on that ladder of like achieve more in your working life, which is often associated with money. And kind of coupled with that for me, I think in a previous relationship, I was the very financially responsible, sensible one, and had a partner who was absolutely the complete opposite. So I took on that responsibility on behalf of us both. And as I've moved through life and I'm with a different partner now, I've found it quite hard to shake that sense that I have to be the one that is the main breadwinner, make sure everything gets paid for, is really financially sound and responsible, which was part of a challenge when I left my corporate role in terms of my own thinking about what would that mean for me and was I doing the right thing.
And when did you first start to realise that perhaps this narrative of you must be the main breadwinner, when did that start to realise that actually it's not true, or as true as you think it is?
Probably I would say, well, weirdly, it's quite interesting because it's definitely not like a thing from my childhood because my parents have quite a traditional relationship where my dad was the main breadwinner and my mum had spells of time where she didn't work at all or like sort of work part-time for fun, doing things that were like for pocket money or pin money or whatever the term used to be. So it definitely hadn't come from there, but I know that I was quite resistant to wanting my life to be the same in terms of relationships. So I wonder whether some of it came from me in terms of putting that pressure on myself to be able to be independent. I think probably when I got a really good partner who we just communicated with each other better. There was sort of less expectation. There was more conversation around happiness and wanting to be happy and healthy and well, rather than being wealthy and having loads of savings and a certain sort of lifestyle. So I think that definitely started to shift things. And actually, my unhappiness in my last in-house job, definitely the finance played a big part in being able to make a decision to leave that without another job to go to. But that started quite a long time before I sort of took the leap, because a lot of it was about like, what do I need versus what do I want? And I think you can easily fall into a trap, particularly if you are lucky enough to have a really good income, where you think the things you need are definitely far more than they actually are. The things that are perhaps a luxury, you begin to think are your needs, and they're really not at all. And so, yeah, wanting to make those decisions to shift role, I think helped to shift my mindset about money.
And what disruption did that cause? So as you started to do the shifts and the questioning, what happened?
I felt guilty. I felt really guilty that I had been in a position where I was able to provide certain things for my relationship. So holidays, like all the material things, which makes me sound like, a bit of a shallow person, but holidays, really nice clothes, going out, lots of experiences, treating friends and family, being that sort of generous person in terms of that generosity showing up as stuff. I felt guilty for thinking I'm not going to be able to do that anymore. And I also felt like there were people who might judge me for choosing to take a sort of what they might perceive to be a step down or a step backwards from quite a successful sort of career, as in but why would you not want a job that earned that much money? And like, why would you not want to take the next step and earn even more? Like you think people are going to think there's something wrong with you. And some of that is judgment from others, definitely, but a lot of it is internal. Like what you think is probably nobody who's important to you is thinking it, because they're all too worried about their own stuff. But you assume everybody's like eyes on you going, oh my God, why is she making these decisions? Like, how stupid. Why would she leave that financial security? So, and then some of it is societal, isn't it? It's about like what we're grown up to believe is the right thing to do in terms of, keep taking that next step, and house, mortgage, good jobs, retirement, all that stuff sort of almost pre-planned for you, I think, in our society quite often.
And we've had these conversations before, and I've been in that similar position where I worked in corporate. I was earning the most in our relationship and stepping away to my own business. That dynamic and has shifted definitely. And I think part of the guilt you have is this sense of, oh, I'm not doing womanhood right. I'm not doing feminism right, because suddenly I'm more dependent perhaps on my partner than independent. And then so for me there was a whole narrative of like, oh, am I like becoming a trad wife or like whatever it might be? And I'm not in that sense, but you do think, oh, people are thinking, oh, she's left her role, she's got a different job, she's not earning the same, like she's reliant a bit more on her partner. And I definitely see it as a partnership. He definitely wouldn't think, but there is that guilt, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And isn't that really interesting though? Because had maybe one of us chosen, or both of us chosen, to step away from our career for a bit and not earn as much because we were fulfilling what is perceived as quite a traditional female role, as in bringing up children, not wanting us to get into a whole other conversation that could take the rest of the day, that would be less frowned upon. And in fact, we probably would be better supported by other women, because other women would be going, oh, you shouldn't have to choose between. So it's just really interesting that if you make that choice independently because of your happiness, your well-being, whatever the reasons are that you're making that choice, that seems to be more frowned upon than that choice being because you're again doing those things that society expect of you as a woman in a relationship. Like, if you went off work to go and have kids and said, I'm not going to go back, I'm going to focus on this, people I think would be far less judgmental than they are when you're doing it for other reasons.
Yeah. So in your circumstances, what has been, would you say, the consequences of holding on to that sense of guilt, that sense of judgment?
There was a really recent example of a consequence, which is my partner wanted to change their working pattern. Not probably, for all the reasons that I wanted to change mine. And rather than my first reaction being, I empathise with you and I want to know more about why this is important to you and let's talk it through, my first reaction was, oh no, I'm going to have to go and get a big job again with a big salary because I'm going to have to take that financial burden back on. Because if my partner goes part-time, we're not going to earn the money we need to earn to live, even though I now know it's significantly less than I earned and we earned before. And I actually, it was only on reflection that I thought, God, what a selfish response to have had, because I didn't give my partner that space to have that conversation in the way that they wanted. And actually, they reflected back to me, oh, like everything you said has been really negative. Like your response to me saying that was not what I expected. And I didn't really like that about myself, if I'm honest, that I wasn't there for him in the way that he'd been there for me when I was having, similar thoughts and conversations about my career choices. But that was definitely that sense of, I have to take that financial burden because that's what I've always done. And I feel guilty that I'm not taking as much of it now. But actually, I am going to be a bit cross and feel really upset if the choice of my partner means that I have to go back to being that person that has to earn more money. But it was, quite weird to think it through because I felt a real sense of like, oh, no, that's going to like what's that going to mean for me? And I'm going to have to step back into that space where I don't want to be now financially and take that pressure on.
And where were you feeling it? Because often we can't surface the words, or it's only through a lot of talking that we eventually get to that point of realization. For a long time, there can be other things that are going on with us within our body or the way that we're behaving or our actions that are perhaps the signals to something that deeper. Did you experience anything like that?
I definitely felt some physical reaction, both to that sort of the initial conversation and then my thinking afterwards, which was definitely where I hold tension and stress in the sort of top bit of my body. I could feel myself getting tense straight away, like the mention of money and me making that leap to like it's all going to be on me again just made my whole body like feel tight and tense. Absolutely. And I know like the way that I reacted to that conversation is not how I would have reacted had it been a different conversation about something that he'd want to do. And I felt myself getting defensive straight away. And I'm going to have to argue my corner and come out like, I've got to like, it's like, I felt like I needed to get into like almost conflict mode straight away before I really knew where the conversation was going, which probably meant that I then wasn't listening and picking up the cues from him about what he really needed, because I'd just gone straight into like, it's all going to be disaster for me. I've catastrophized it now because I'm going to have to go back to a space where I don't want to be. I'm just unlearning all of this and trying to be in a different space. And now I'm going to be thrown right back in because of someone else's decision. And I already feel like cross and frustrated about that. And I'm going to come out angry.
And what were the ripples of that?
I didn't like myself for it. And for most people who know me, if anyone who knows me is on here, I'm not a particularly angry person.
No.
And I really try to be conflict avoidant and people please. And I'm almost the opposite of that. And so actually for me, it was a bit of a shock to have sensed that really sort of like quite like gut reaction being so strong to it. So I didn't like it. My partner clearly didn't like it. So there was like, we're going to have to we didn't say this, but it was like, we're going to have to revisit this conversation when I can be in a space where I feel a lot calmer about it and I've been able to work it through. But guilt is like such a big thing, because then for me, I felt guilty afterwards when I realized like what provoked my reaction was conditioning from my past, not like how I really feel about what he said and what he would like now. Just guilty that I hadn't enabled him to have that space he needed to have the conversation he wanted to have, and that I'd made it all about myself.
Yeah, yeah. But it is all about yourself as well, because
it is all about me.
Well, in life, obviously. But that's the thing with the conditioning, isn't it? Like we are just following this path that has been trod before, and we don't realize we haven't had to have those conversations before. And so you've got this dual thing of, I'm trying to tackle the situation that's in front of me right now, which is this conversation I'm having with my partner about their work relationship. But I'm also realizing that there's this whole stem of me that is thinking back to past relationships, how other people have reacted, how I've felt my value has been financially, all of that that's at play.
And I definitely felt triggered, because I felt triggered to like, so the solution to my partner being able to have what they would like is that I'm going to have to go back into an environment that I don't want to be in anymore, that I found really toxic and challenging, because I went straight to, I'm going to have to go back to a job like my old one, with the stress that job had, with the salary that job had, to enable all of this to happen. And actually I found that quite triggering, because I was like, I don't want that anymore. I've moved on from that being a thing that I really want. And so now to think that I might have to be thrown back into that space was really not a nice feeling.
No. And isn't it funny that the answer, as you perceived it to be, was, I have to go
backwards.
into,
Yeah,
and not into, it's not even a sense of I need to earn a certain amount of money. No. It was like, I will have to be back in that position.
Yeah, absolutely. There wasn't, so, and I know we've talked before, you've got a really brilliant post that you shared not that long ago about like work identity and profession, and how all of that, plays into like how you feel about yourself and what you experience. And so, yeah, it was strange, because I felt like I'd made quite a lot of progress of breaking away from that old self. But the first trigger was right back to that old self, not like, oh, well, I could just do more in my business and try and get more clients, or I could go and do something completely different, but that's got really great earning potential. It was straight back to, that's where I was before, and that's where I'm going to end up again. And I don't want to.
Yeah. So what do you think that saying said to you at the time about your identity as it was?
Well, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I have been so tied to my professional identity for a really long time that it has been a challenge to try and step away from that. But interestingly, feeling triggered about having to go back to that work identity that had felt so important to me, and like, who even am I if I'm not communications director employed in house? It's quite interesting that the thought of going back to that actually felt not very nice, because there's a bit of me like, actually, how long was I trying to let go of that identity, or did I feel uncomfortable in that identity, but I didn't feel able to like break away from it earlier? So maybe I was in that role and being very performative in it, and all that feedback you get from other people, you're so brilliant at what you do, and like, you're so capable, and all of these things keeping you in an identity that perhaps doesn't fit you anymore, but you're just not quite in that space where you can let it go.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder what the rule that was playing through your mind at the point that your brain went back instead of to your reality of now.
Gosh, I don't know. That's interesting, isn't it? Maybe because, I don't know, maybe the backwards bit was because in terms of like what other people would define as success and financial success, which was the root of all of this kind of paranoia and the thing we've been talking about, like my biggest financial success was in that role. But actually, everything else that I might now deem as successful for me and things that are important to me in my life were very far away from that. But because that trigger was about like, I'm going to have to be responsible for finances, my head went straight back to, well, that was when I was most financially successful. So that, and it was secure, it was an in-house role. So that's what I'm going to have to do. I can't take these risks to work for myself and not have a, so, it's all about fear and risk, isn't it? I guess maybe. And like you say, what you know versus what you maybe don't yet.
Yeah. So it's interesting, the word risk. And I wonder what the risk was that you were avoiding taking.
God, I feel like this is a therapy session for anybody. As people are sat here listening to me having therapy now, like,
no, I'm not a therapist.
She's not a therapist, but it feels like friend therapy. I wonder whether the risk I was avoiding taking was the belief in myself. Like I wasn't taking a risk on my own self that I could find another way to feel like financially secure and feel that sense of like I can do this in a way that I want to. But maybe I was in my own way a bit with that. I don't know. Maybe it was that risk that like I can't do it unless I've got that security of what I knew before. Like the unknown feels too difficult, and I'm not sure if I believe in myself enough that I could financially make what I made before for myself, not from someone else. I don't know. That's just me thinking it out loud now.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to journal after this. I'll be like, oh my God, all this stuff in my head.
But it sounds like, the fact that you've been able to, with some objectivity, realise now that your initial reaction was perhaps not the most helpful for you or your partner, shows that there's probably been a bit of distance and time between that first initial trigger and where you are now. What do you think? What's been that shift, I suppose, for you over that time?
Well, this is going to sound like this is all kind of been staged to be this, but I have been experimenting with your blessing because I've been obviously keeping an eye on what you've been doing around unlearning. And I've been part of your unlearning lab, which is recently launched. And I think that's given me time, headspace, and prompts to think about the things that are really going on for me in some of this space. And I know for like most of my adult life, like financial security and financial fear have been a big thing for me, but I've never really made the time to unpick kind of where that's come from and what does that mean for me and how might that be impacting the decisions that I'm making now in a negative or a positive way. So I think having that time to reflect on some of that without it having to feel hugely deep and meaningful, but maybe in like sort of shorter, more manageable kind of ways to challenge myself and do some of that thinking has been really helpful. And I think being surrounded by a group of people and a community that I've been able to curate myself of people who are maybe in similar positions. So like yourself and others I know who've left corporate roles and are going out on their own, or some people I know doing the opposite. Just being able to have more open and frank conversations with people who get it, I think is really helpful because it normalizes it and you realize it's not just me. I'm not the only person in this world who is stressed and worried about these things, but also I'm not the only person who wants to let some of that go to see what the potential is. If I stop worrying about that and I stop following those rules, like what's the worst thing that's going to happen? So I think it's really important to be able to have those conversations. I think if you had to internalize it all, it would be very hard to break some of those rules that you've been living by, for sure.
Yeah. Well, especially when you get into comparison and all of these other things that help keep us conditioned in that state. Absolutely. What are you proud of having reclaimed, I suppose, or starting to reclaim?
What am I proud of? I'm proud that let me see, what am I proud of? I'm actually proud that, but this is really embarrassing to say as like a mid 40-year-old woman. I'm actually really proud that I feel like I'm more on top of like my own financial future and financial sort of well-being than ever before. So actually, even though I'm not earning as much as I used to be earning, I've got a much better grip on like, what do I actually need to earn? Where could I be saving more money? Making decisions like based on like, is this something that really fills me with joy and I'm going to be disappointed not to do, not to buy, not to go to, rather than like just saying yes to loads of stuff because you kind of, you just can, because you've got the financial freedom to do it. So that feels like quite a big thing for me. And I do feel quite proud that I probably am thinking differently now about like my income, like what I use my money for, and how did my finances align with the other things that I want to get out of life. I think that feels like quite a big step for me. There are other things, but they're a bit more further away from that sort of nub of the sort of finance bit.
Yeah. And going back to something you said earlier on in the conversation, you were talking about like when you had lots of disposable income, like one of the things that filled you up was this ability to be able to treat people and have experiences with people and all that. And I would wonder whether that was it performative, and how your relationship with that might have shifted now.
Yeah, so it was definitely learned because people in my family who I love dearly and love me dearly show their love through physical gifts. So it was definitely a learned thing in some respects. I think probably now for me, I realise that my generosity it can be generosity of spirit. It can be giving people time and my energy and spending time with people and doing things together. It doesn't have to come with, oh, and I've bought you this as well. And actually the people around me who are kind of grateful for that and want that, like they don't care if I'm bringing a bottle of fizz with me or a bunch of flowers or anything else. Like they are happy that we're spending time together. So I feel like that's quite a nice learning for me, that actually that, your generosity doesn't have to show up in material things. It can show up in just being available to people. If somebody wants you to read through a document and give it a common sense check, or have you got 10 minutes to have a phone call to talk something through, being able to say yes to those things is being as generous, if not more so, than rocking up with a present. So I feel.
Don't stop getting me gifts though.
Yeah, by the way, that was me telling you I'm not getting you anything for your birthday. No, I absolutely am. It's fine.
Can we start that? Can we start that next year?
Yeah.
I'm joking. Your gift of time is more than adequate.
But I think it makes me maybe more thoughtful about the gifts I give as well, though. Like, is this something this person would really love? And actually, it's not about like how much it costs or how big it is or whatever. It's about like, is this something that would be meaningful in that person's life, or make them smile, or bring them a bit of joy? Like that's the important thing when it does come to that sort of gifting and generosity.
So where are you breaking your rules now then?
Where am I breaking my rules? Well, my rule breaking is happening in a slightly different space. So, and it's definitely about how I'm spending my time, and I still am sometimes challenged by it, but I am absolutely determined that I'm not filling every day of my week with work. That wasn't the point of me leaving the role that I had. And I realised that quite a lot of the things that I did before were work adjacent things. So they were still all about me in my role as a comms professional. So all the stuff that I used to think were like the fun and the added stuff ended up being like more work. So I am actually now even more determined this year than I was last year, to make sure that I'm spending my days doing things that are creative and about my curiosity, and not about work and not about necessarily earning money, more about like actually what's filling me up. So I've definitely been breaking some of my own rules around what I think I should be doing with my Monday to Friday.
Should, yes, that word.
Should. It's that. Is it? It can't be the first time I've used it, surely, in this conversation. But yeah, that should. What other people think you should be doing with your time, I am determined not to feel guilty for, and actually feel like in the role that I do in my work around sort of mentoring others, that I should be more open in talking about, because I'm sure you and I and a few of our other friends are not the only people that have felt sort of trapped by the 9 to 5. It was never 9 to 5, was it? But
No,
I'm on 7 days a week doing this job. So but I definitely am feeling less guilty about doing things for me in my time. And at the time I want to do them, that's been something that I'm learning about as well, like to go with when my energy is good and not be sucked into this, like doing it at 9 o'clock, like in the morning, when actually I'm better at doing sort of deep and meaningful work at like 6 o'clock at night, which is a challenge. And I know it's a challenge you've also recently talked a lot about too.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking straight to my experiments of real life experiments at the minute, because I'm completely in that space of knowing all the things I want to do and being ruled by a lot of shoulds and conditioning from corporate days and all of that. So yes, I completely hear you in that. And I was just pondering as you were talking about the synchronicity, I suppose, between as you're filling up your cup with the creativity, the guilt around the financials is perhaps changing. And I wondered how much that
I think I've
has
definitely
been at play.
Yeah, I definitely think it has been shifting. Um it just doesn't feel as important, because the things that I'm filling my time up with don't need to cost me anything in terms of money either. So, I can go out and have a lovely day going around a museum with someone like you. We did that just very recently. Or I can read a book, because I have time to read a book now, and I can put that time in my day and go, I really want to protect that, because I don't need to be doing work that day. So it's, I can focus on exercise, all these things that when I was in a full-time job and doing all the other bits and pieces around that job, I just didn't choose to make my time for. And now I'm like, well, now I am choosing to give myself time. I want to use it for the things that are important to me, and they don't have to be things that cost loads of money. It's not about going on city breaks and, doing all of this stuff. I can actually have a really lovely time in my own living room with a good book and the knowledge that I'm not going to have to be checking my emails, or somebody's going to phone me and go, oh, this has happened, like I'm on call, all that kind of stuff. It's just so nice that those gifts are like, they're not about money. So that definitely eases that guilt. I'm not filling my time when I'm not working and earning, feeling guilty that I'm not earning because I'm spending it all on stuff somewhere else. So there definitely has, I think, been a shift for me, for sure. Maybe more still to come.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're always on learning, and I'll ask you about that in a minute. But I asked you about where you were feeling that tension earlier, that guilt and stuff, and I wonder whether, as you were talking, then have you noticed a different sense of feeling? Is there something else at play that helps you tap into when the radar of when you're in the direction?
I definitely feel less heavy, if that's a way to describe it. I feel lighter. I feel like my shoulders actually do genuinely sit where they're supposed to, not up round my ears. So that sort of physical tension in my body, I definitely feel less of. And what I found interesting is actually not that long after leaving, it's like slightly tangential, but leaving my corporate role, seeing people that had only really known me doing that job, saying to me, oh my god, you look so happy, you look amazing, you look, all those things we love to hear about ourselves. But I'm like, geez, what did I look? I felt like I looked the same, but I'm like, what must I have been carrying myself like before, if people are noticing physically that I seem different? And some of that is probably your, like, sort of what you're shining out of yourself as well, isn't it? Like, I am freer and lighter and happier. But yeah, I found that quite interesting, that people are like, oh my god, like, you just look different in a good way, which I'd sort of hadn't noticed that I'd I'd looked any different to, any other point in time. So I do think that physical release of tension from your body, you just carry yourself differently. And yeah, you definitely feel lighter and less tense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've noticed difference. I mean, you're always glowing. And that's the thing. You like, even when you were in
Makeup.
the worst of times in your corporate career, you as an extrovert, you were very good at putting on the face, weren't you? And it was
Exhausted.
probably people who weren't as close to you perhaps hadn't realised, and that is part of the transition and part of the unlearning process as well. Is people still wanting to put you in those, oh well, you're fine, not taking into consideration your thoughts or your feelings because you've never presented it as such to them.
And that's I don't know if you experienced this ever in some of your like decision making about big things in your life, but like not on purpose, well, on purpose, but I wasn't doing it in like a manipulative way. For a long time when I was unhappy in my job, I kept that from my partner. Some of that probably was because I was thinking the conversation's going to be about money. Because I am the main breadwinner and I don't want to have that conversation because I'm going to feel uncomfortable. But also because I was like, by the time I get to the end of my working week and I've got like nice time with my partner, I don't want that to be consumed with the thing that's draining me. But you are right, certain personalities are really good at being able to mask like how they're really feeling, and my general desire is to have that demeanor of like sort of happy, light-hearted, positive, all that kind of stuff. But it just gets harder and harder to do that, and I probably have been unhappy in myself, and because my partner worked away a lot, we didn't really spend that much of a week together. I put so much effort into like masking that and not wanting to show him that actually he was a little bit surprised when I said, this is how unhappy I am, and was in tears. Like, I think that came as a shock because I hadn't let him in enough to kind of know that was the impact it was having on my life. So that all plays into it, doesn't it? Like, you learn to cover it up and like just show a certain side of things to people because that's what you think they expect of you. Sometimes because you're trying to protect them from, what's really going on. Sometimes because you don't want them to judge you for how you're feeling because you think you should. I've got the big job type, the big money. I've got all these things. I should be feeling amazing about this. Like, I'm at the pinnacle. I'm at a really good point in my career. So why don't I feel happy? Why am I feeling all of these things? And everybody will think there's something wrong with me if I express the fact that I'm unhappy.
Yeah. I mean, it goes into, without opening up that whole conversation about the what we should be as strong, powerful women in the workplace, and we carry on. I know there's also that rule I'm hearing of like, oh, well, when I see my other half at the weekend, I must make sure we have a good time because this is the only time we're getting together. And so there is that at play as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many shoulds. Like you say, we could be at risk of opening a whole other conversation.
So you mentioned that, there's still a lot that you're unlearning even now. What's perhaps one rule that you are noticing that you're still bumping up against that perhaps people who are watching this might recognise as well?
One rule that I'm still bumping up against, having said, and I don't actually know where this rule comes from. Maybe I'll know by the end of this conversation. Having said all those things I said about, I'm like really happy now that I can get that better balance and I can choose what I do with my time and all of those things. I still feel this weird sense of, it's probably guilt for want of a better word, about changing, like not wanting what I wanted before. I sometimes feel like, well, that doesn't feel okay. It doesn't feel okay that I don't want to be a director of comms. It doesn't feel okay that I don't want the big job. And it usually is triggered by other people's reactions to a conversation or other people suggesting something that feels to me so misaligned now with what I want to do in my life. But yet somehow I still feel like, should I? Yeah, actually, should I want that? Maybe, maybe they've got a point because Otherwise they wouldn't have said it. Do you know what I mean? And so again, I think I carry the responsibility for other people's kind of judgments about where they think I should be at professionally and what I should be doing in my career, rather than not worrying about that and just owning like me and not, I don't know if that made sense. I felt like
It does. It's back to that identity piece, isn't it? And the identities that you're carrying, and then other people have their view of your identity. And when they keep trying to pull you back into those old ones, it leaves you in this sense of, oh, what have I missed? Where should I be doing that? Why do people still resonate with that old identity? Have I not done enough of a shedding of my image or whatever it might be?
It's a bit jarring, isn't it? Because you're going on with a flow of like, I'm really like into this new life that I'm creating for myself, and then a conversation will happen that sort of pulls you. Well, it doesn't pull you back. The person's trying to pull you back into something that you don't want to be in, but it just gives you that moment where you go, oh, am I doing the right thing here? But it's getting fewer and far between, and my reaction to that is now less questioning myself and am I making the right choices, and more frustration that I've maybe not articulated where I'm at and what I want from life well enough for them to not feel the need to do that.
This is a whole. We'll have to wrap up in a minute, but this is a whole can of worms. I mean, I don't know whether you mentioned it earlier, but I've written recently about like identity and my identities that I carry, and in writing that, I've got probably about 5 or 6 other articles that I need to write now. I need to write.
I need to get them out of you. See,
but there is this whole thing around like your identities tapped to your kind of worth and your value, your meaning, like how you're showing up. There's just so much wrapped up in that, and I think actually it is one of the biggest cornerstones of unlearning, because our identity is so wrapped up in everything that happens that we do. So I won't.
That's for another guest to delve into with you next time you have a live, and I'll be the other side of it watching, going, oh yeah, it really resonates with me.
I just think this is the big conversation that we're all beginning to have, is this kind of identity, and what do we choose to be our identity and what are others have it. So it's a whole thing. So anyway, we've talked for a long time. As always, like, I know what we're like. We can go on.
You couldn't have had a different first guest, because I would have been highly offended, because I always want to be your first at everything like this.
Absolutely.
But equally, you probably should have, because you could have wrapped it up ages ago, because I never shut up.
No, but the thing is, I can ask a load of questions anyway. But just to wrap up, for those that are coming across you for the first time, like, who would love your work? Who are you calling into your world? How can we help you?
I am calling people into my world who are ready to grow and thrive, whatever that looks like for them. It doesn't have to be a big thing. I'm working with people who value kindness and compassion over the opposite of that. Because I've had enough of that in life. I'm all about the good stuff. I'm working with people who are wanting slightly higher energy vibes, a bit more positive thinking in their lives. So I'm just all about the good stuff at the moment. If I was going to describe myself, if it has to be about work, I'm the chief vibes officer. Although I'm not sure that is just a work thing, because we were having a conversation the other day where you're like, oh, you'll bring the jazz hands. And I was like, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just here to bring the good vibes to like whatever is going on in life.
I actually think your job title should be like chief icebreaker.
Chief icebreaker. Yeah, I love it. So yes, that's what I'm here for. If you're not here for that, I'm probably not the right person for you to be working with. But I'm doing lots of fun things at the moment with individuals, but also with teams around shifting cultures and developing people, and really enabling people to have that think about, like, where do they want to be career wise. And a couple of people said to me the other day, I'd only ever met them online, comms professionals, and they said to me the other day, oh my God, I can't believe I've met you in person. It's like meeting your fairy godmother. So here I am being people's kindness fairy godmother. That's what I'm aiming for at the moment. But open to opportunities and abundance. That's my new thing. I'm just being open to it all. I don't want to define myself. I just choose to be me and show up where that is welcomed. And sometimes where it's not, because I muscle my way in.
Well, exactly. We write our own rule book. That's the takeaway. And thank you. I will, when I upload all of this after, I'll put all our links in so that people can connect with you if they want to connect with you. You write over on Substack as well, although not in a work capacity. That's your creative outlet. So if people are interested in that, we can do a link to that as well. And if the conversation we've had resonated with people who are listening, please feel free to subscribe. I've got a free download which is called the 30-day flip, which gives you a whole load of prompts that you can take day by day to start figuring out your own bullshit that's perhaps getting in the way, and help you to start experimenting with little shifts that might make you change the way you think, live, work, whatever it is that you want. So I will be back in a couple of weeks' time with someone new. But thank you so much. And thank you to those that have joined us in the comments and all of that stuff. I don't know why I'm doing the Zoom wave, but I'm doing the Zoom wave. Bye.